So my name is Kaylin. I am the Membership and Marketing Manager of Alliance for Girls. We are so excited to be hosting this first webinar that we've ever done, and just really appreciate Kim offering to lead today's webinar on Title IX, the California Fair Play Act, and how we can all work together to achieve gender equity in sports and make sure girls have the opportunities they need to participate and to, you know, be a part of so many great sports programs. Just a quick, intro on what I do. Everything to do with engagement and outreach for membership, communications, and promoting all of your great work is what I'm in charge of. So if any of you have opportunities to highlight on our calendar, have a story to share on our communications, our blog, our newsletter, all of that falls under my responsibility. So feel free to reach out anytime. And then I wanted to make a quick note to thank Ignite National. They are another Alliance member organization who is really providing this webinar platform for us. So what Ignite does is they work with girls and young women on political activism and encouraging girls and young women to participate and to run for office. So check them out when you have a chance. And thanks again to Ignite for letting us use their webinar platform. And then again, I said earlier, I see there's a few of you trickling in now. Please feel free to turn on your audio if you'd like, or your video. We want this webinar to be interactive. And then if neither of those are options for you, there is also the chat function on the bottom left corner. So if you have questions or comments, feel free to type those in there. And then finally, at the end of the session, they're going to be taken to the evaluation for this webinar. Please fill that out. It helps both me and Kim, improve our webinars, our workshops, and just moving forward, do a better job in making sure that we're reaching or addressing your needs and your questions. So I think that's about it for me. One last thing is these are peer-to-peer opportunities. So if any of you are also interested in leading your own workshops or your own speaking opportunities and things like that, I am putting together a form for all of your proposals, and this is the core of what Alliance for Girls does, is bringing all of you who are working with girls, who are championing girls, together to share expertise and share your resources and to reach more girls in the Bay Area. So without further ado, I'll let Kim take it away. Thank you again for offering this. We're so excited to learn more about the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Kaylin. Thanks, everyone. I hope you can hear me all right. Please feel free to chat or note in the chat box, if you can't hear me or you need me to slow down or anything at all. And then as Kaylin mentioned, if you have questions as we go, I'm happy to answer those, or we can save some time for the end as well. So I'm Kim Turner, staff attorney with Legal Aid Society Employment Law Center. I have been doing this work a number of years, and I'm really pleased to be sharing with you today about Title IX and the Fair Play Act, which is a park and rec law, gender equity sports law. And as the title of our presentation explains, we're working to getting girls into the game for a lifetime of success. And I just want to say thank you to Alliance for Girls for having me. We've gotten so much out of our connection with Alliance. I've been training a lot of member organizations about these laws and empowering girls and their leaders and community organizations to request gender equity and see it day to day in their communities through these powerful laws. So I look forward to being more in touch with you all after today's training. And I want to give you some tools today to sort of start asking the questions about gender equity in your area and what you can do about it. So I believe, sorry, I have, let's see, the ability to move the slide forward, I believe. I don't know if Kaylin can advance it. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. So what are we going to talk about today? Agenda. So introductions. I hear it sounds like we have a manageable number on the phone and on video. And if you want to introduce yourself via chat, that's fine too. But I'd love to go around in a moment and hear from you all who you are and your interest in the presentation. just so that I can shape it to meet your needs. I want to talk about the benefits of sports for girls. Why does it matter for girls to play sports or not? And it does matter, so we'll go into some stats on that. And then talk about the laws and the issues. So what vehicles, what statutory vehicles are available to make your programs more equitable, your school and community programs. We have a short video. It's only 4 minutes long. And what I love about it especially is that it's narrated by Alliance for Girls members. Girls from Holy Names High School were part of the video and did a great job. So I love featuring them. And the video explains the laws a little bit more and from a different angle. And then we'll go into some scenarios. You know, I won't call it a test, but in some ways I'll test your knowledge, you know, about what we've learned and kind of talk through some situations so you'll have a better sense of how the laws work. We'll have a little more time for questions and answers and any other scenarios you want to go through. And thank you and my contact information so that you can find me and email me and call me with your questions. Okay, so next slide, objectives. What are we going to come away from the training with? I want you all to understand why girls playing sports matters, you know, why it translates into so many great benefits for girls. Understand the laws a little bit. You know, it's not going to be too in-depth, but something to come away with so that you could explain it to a friend or a colleague or a girl that you're working with. Develop some plans for how to create more opportunities for girls. You know, I really love the idea of not only giving you knowledge, but some action steps so that you can really start making changes right away in your area. And then I just want to note throughout the presentation, this is not legal advice. I am an attorney, but I'm not giving legal advice as to your specific situation. It's general information. So if you're concerned about something in your school or park and rec program, please consult an attorney. I'm happy to provide referrals or explore that with you, but you know, just know this is general information. Okay, so I mentioned a little bit about myself. Kim Turner, staff attorney, Legal Aid Society Employment Law Center, and we are a nonprofit. We're 100 years old this year. I'm really proud of that, given that we're often nonprofit workers are not able to stay around that long, and we have been able to do that. And I'm proud of the service that we've been able to provide, particularly low-income communities around California and the nation over these 100 years. My project is within Legal Aid Society, and it's Fair Play for Girls in Sports. And we're a small team in our project, but we focus on serving girls in grades K through 12, not really college athletics. And today I'll focus more on K through 12. And then we also focus on low-income areas and girls of color because statistically those areas are getting girls less into the game, and those girls really need sports opportunities because of all the attendant benefits. So that's our focus, and I want to add, I'll talk about Title IX today, but I'm also going to talk about the Fair Play Act, which is the park and rec law that requires gender equity in community competitive sports. And a lot of people don't know about it, so I look forward to sharing that with you too. And Title IX and the Fair Play Act are very similar. Okay, so now I get to turn to you to introduce yourself. And again, anyone can do it via video, via phone, or via chat. So I'll do the example. I'd like you to introduce yourself, say your name, the program or organization that you're with, your title, and then the sport or position that you played growing up. And actually for some people it might be a sport you wished you played growing up, but you didn't get the chance to play because you were denied the opportunity. And then I also want to hear if you can share your particular interest in the training today. So what about our work or Title IX, for example, are you interested in learning about? Be great to hear that so I can shape the training. So, and then maybe Kaylin can be my guinea pig. So I would say Kim, Fair Play for Girls in Sports, staff attorney. I actually played volleyball and soccer growing up. I was lucky enough to play volleyball at the college level, and I am often interested in knowing my rights. So Kaylin, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so Kaylin, again, I'm the Membership and Marketing Manager at Alliance for Girls. A sport that I played growing up was badminton, and I played some basketball, but I wish I was actually good enough to play basketball, good enough in basketball to play on our sports team, but my parents never really encouraged that, or it wasn't really just something that I grew up with. And so, yeah, if I could choose a sport, I wish I could play basketball better.
Okay, great. Thank you for that example. Maybe we can go with the folks on video right now. I see 2 other people on video. Anyone else want to jump in and introduce themselves? Yes.
Can you hear me? All right. I wasn't sure the mic
Yes.
was working. So I'm Valerio Ianni, and I'm the Youth Director and Education for Bay Area Disc Association. So that means Ultimate Frisbee. So I play Ultimate Frisbee for 20 years, also as a co-ed sport. So I play in the co-ed division. I play for Team Italy, the World National Championship, and I'm interested because we are built girl-specific program, and I want to know more how we can bring more girls to the sport.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, next person there.
Hi, I'm Mia Arakaki, and I work with Girls Leadership. I'm the Director of Programs at Girls Leadership, and I grew up, I was a competitivist. I played softball, soccer, diving. I played soccer in college, midfield, center, or left. And I'm particularly interested in this training because just in general, promoting girls in sports is important to me, and also related to work, I'm just interested in hearing if there's anything that we could do to promote girls' participation in sports.
Great, thank you. Okay, anyone else on video, or should we switch to audio now? Just jump in. I think we heard from a few people when we started.
This is Kathleen. I'm the Alliance for Girls, and I'm co-chair of the advisory board. And I'm older than a lot of you, so I played all the sports I could play that the boys would let me be included in. And then later, the YMCA started doing introducing sports for girls. So, but I still work out and have been a runner much of my life. But I think it's like the one most important thing that has empowered me as a woman, and I hope to create even greater access for girls. And so I want to learn more about what the legal parts of it are today.
Great, thank you. Next person.
I'm happy to jump in again.
Thank you.
I'm Jane Bernard Powers. I am Professor Emerita from San Francisco State. My interest, because I'm worked in gender equity, both centrally and on the edge of my career for a long time. So the jumping forward, when I was in high school, which was a really long time ago, we had intramural programs. This was in Dearborn, Michigan. So my sport that I loved was volleyball and field hockey. There were, at that point, there was no provision for money for girls in sports.
Right.
And that's, I think, certainly fair to say, that's one thing that Title IX is brought. I am a founder and co-chair of San Francisco Democratic Women in Action, and we're interested in supporting legislation that impacts opportunities and the lives of girls and women and families. So I'm interested in knowing how are we doing with Title IX generally, and how can we influence what's happening locally.
Thank you.
So that's just my area.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on the phone?
Yeah, my name is. Go ahead. Okay, I'll go. Thanks. My name is Lauren Exaba. I am the founder and executive director of Squash Drive, which is an after-school program in Oakland, and we work with both boys and girls, teaching them the sport of squash and tutoring and mentoring them. And I played college squash, and I'm from the East Coast where squash is a lot bigger, but I was lucky enough to play sports my whole life. I had two parents that felt very passionately about that, and it opened a lot of doors for me. And in the work that I do, I'm just interested kind of in learning about where the laws are at and how to help be a part of it. And the fact that I work with young girls and wanting to empower them through sport is just one of the reasons why I'm joining the call. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, anyone else?
This is Sarah Sanderson. I'm president of Jazz Women and Girls Advocates. I grew up in the 60s. Well, I was born in the 50s, so there were no sports for girls in my little town. So I got to be a cheerleader, and then after college, I was forward on my soccer team and sometimes fullback. So I loved that, and now I ski. But I'm also interested in, because I know that Title IX applies to music programs. So that's why I'm interested. Because we want to see more girl instrumentalists out there in jazz.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, sounds like we got most everybody there. And to the extent that we can connect after the call, anyone who didn't get a chance to introduce themselves, happy to hear from you later on. Okay, so we have lots of ground to cover. I'm excited. So let's go to that next slide. And basically, girls in sports, why it matters. What are the obstacles, and the benefits for that matter. So just throwing out, maybe one person can answer, what's the benefit for a girl playing sports? Why does she do it?
Confidence, leadership.
Confidence, leadership, perfect. Okay, and there's many more, but that's exactly why we are working on this. Girls who play sports develop confidence, leadership, discipline, teamwork skills, things that will pay off, skills that will pay off throughout their lives, their careers. So, there's lots of benefits. We could go on with a long list, but let's keep that in mind as we talk further. Now, what are the barriers that you think girls are facing in getting into sports? Maybe one specific example in your community. Anyone want to jump in on a barrier?
This is Jane. Harkening back to, I think, an obstacle. I think Title IX has been a significant opportunity, but it's not been acted on significantly in school districts.
Yeah, absolutely. Compliance is a huge issue. A lot of schools are just not aware of their obligations or following through with them. So that's a big barrier. All right. So I'm going to go somewhat quickly through the slides because I want to cover everything. But again, we can circle back to anything in particular or talk after the presentation in more depth. But sports health linkages. So in terms of the benefits, some of my favorite stats are coming up. Girls who play sports in adolescence or are physically active in young adulthood are 20% less likely to develop breast cancer. And that's really significant. I mean, this is a health model that we need to be pursuing with girls being physically active. And of course, sports is one way. There's other ways to be physically active, but sports is a proven way to be active. Women and girls who participate in sports and regularly exercise actually experience lower rates of depression. So there's not only physical health benefits, but mental health benefits that are critical. Now, next slide is actually about the employment linkages and actually the academic linkages. So this is surprising to me growing up as an athlete. Sports took a lot of my time, and I was kind of surprised to hear these stats, but a lot of girls and boys who play sports are actually more academically successful than their athletically participating counterparts. And that's because of things like time management. When you have to get to practice, you get your homework done efficiently. Or, you can imagine GPAs come up when the high school has a requirement that you keep your GPA up. A student is more likely to pull that GPA so as to stay on the team. But so statistically, younger female athletes have shown higher grades, higher standardized test scores, and higher graduation rates versus non-athletes. And this is actually even higher amongst girls of color. And I should emphasize that our project focuses, on helping girls of color and girls in low-income communities, as I mentioned before, because these sports opportunities are actually a pathway to academic success, a pathway out of poverty, and a pathway to later employment success. So this is like not about just fun and games, it's dollars and cents for these girls to be playing and for all girls to be playing. And boys, for that matter, get some of these same benefits, but we just want to make sure boys and girls have equal access to those benefits. Now, my favorite stat of all time is women who played sports in high school earned 7% higher wages 15 years later in life versus their non-athlete peers. This kind of shocks people. I mean, 7% over your lifetime can really add up. It's an extra bit of a mortgage payment or childcare, which is so expensive, or grocery bill. So by having girls on the sidelines, we're not necessarily letting them excel not only in the classroom but in the employment sphere. And that's why the Employment Law Center, my organization, does this work. I do see also in the chat line physical literacy is a benefit for girls who play sports, and that is absolutely right. Okay, so next slide is about the relevant laws. I'm getting a little background noise. That's okay. I'm glad that everybody is on the phone or in audio, but if you have a lot of background noise, free to mute. So the relevant laws and entities regarding gender equity in sports. So some of this you've heard of before probably, but some you may not have heard of. So in terms of the laws that are relevant, Title IX is one, obviously, critical federal law that we work with every day. It applies to all states in the country, and it applies to all schools with federal funding. Now, that's usually almost every public school, K through 12 in the country, some private primary and secondary schools if they take any federal funding at all. Some do. And then almost every college and university takes federal funding as part of their loan scheme. So that's why they're subject to Title IX. So their athletic department doesn't have to have Title IX dollars necessarily. Any dollar coming to free and reduced price lunch, for example, would make the entire school subject to the law. The federal constitution bars discrimination, so sometimes that's implicated. State constitutions also, like California has, a bar on discrimination based on gender. And then other laws that people might not be aware of, which I'm excited to talk about today, are things like California's AB 2404, which is the Fair Play Act. That's the Park and Rec gender equity law for community sports programs that are competitive. And then there's things like the Government Education Code of California that also is much like Title IX that can be used as needed. Entities and enforcers. Who is enforcing the law? And someone else mentioned that schools may not be enforcing the law. That is absolutely right. So we're just on that point, state departments of education in Bullet 2 are going to be in entities that work on enforcement and compliance, schools and districts. And then above that, in the first bullet, is city, county, park and rec agencies that run sports programs or host sports programs. That's relevant. They are certainly part of this. And then Office for Civil Rights, not everyone knows that they have a Title IX enforcement rule. So that's a Department of Education office based in Washington, D.C. that enforces Title IX, and complaints can be made to their office if you see an inequity in a school program. So that, we're mixing school and park and rec right now, but these are the entities that cover both those areas in some fashion. And then CIF, I don't know if everyone knows about the State High School Sports Association, CIF, California Interscholastic Federation it's called, and that's really important. And actually I'll just use my pointer. Thanks, Kaylin, for noting that. So we're on CIF here. And then lastly, and maybe for us most importantly, because we do litigate certain cases, is the courts are enforcers of these laws. So we use them too. Okay, so there's a lot there, and we can circle back if people have questions. So the next slide is, what is Title IX? And I mentioned earlier I grew up playing volleyball and soccer and other sports. I did not know about Title IX. I'd heard of it very generally, but I had really no idea what it meant and where it came from. So I like to take nothing for granted when I do training. I really want to bring everybody along. Some people have a lot of knowledge, some people have none, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So it's a 1972 law. It turned 44 this year, so it's been around over 4 decades. And it basically says no person in the U.S. shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So it was contemplated more as an education equity statute, in terms of the classroom, but it then encompassed athletics that are going on in a school context. So we're beyond the classroom, we're on the fields and in the gyms. It applies, as I mentioned, to public schools K through 12, including charter schools. A lot of people don't realize that charters often get some federal funding, so that's critical to remember. And it's about public and private colleges and universities that receive federal funding as well. We, as I mentioned, don't typically do college level athletics, and this presentation is more oriented toward K through 12 level girls. Okay, so what does Title IX do? This is fascinating to me, hopefully to you too, but there's 3 main areas of Title IX enforcement. So number 1 is participation opportunities. Number 2 is treatment and benefits being equal, so equal participation opportunities, equal treatment and benefits, and then lastly, no retaliation. So there's a prescription or prohibition on Title IX oriented retaliation. So if someone makes a complaint, they shouldn't be retaliated against for making that complaint. Now, I want to get into this first section. What is equal participation opportunities? And then maybe I'll quiz you guys in a moment. So there's three ways. This is kind of legalese, so I won't get too deep into it. But in terms of equal participation opportunities, there's three ways that, and I want you to imagine an elementary school, a middle school, or a high school, because they're all subject to Title IX, with a sports program of any kind where students play other schools. So it has to be interscholastic, not intramural, where they play, scrimmage within their own school. So there's three ways that those schools, if they have a sports program, could satisfy this requirement. They can make sure that their male to female ratio of athletes is substantially proportionate to the male to female ratio of student enrollment. This right here, folks, is the gold standard of Title IX and something that we like to see in schools. Now I want to just show you on the whiteboard what this means. So this kind of shocks people. I'm going to do a little demo here. So if I have 100, sorry, forgive my fingers in front of the camera here. If I have 1,000 students in a school, okay, and this is where the quiz comes in, and I have 500 girls in the school, and then I have 500 boys in the school, we have a 50-50 ratio, right, in terms of girls and boys in the school. And that's generally what it is. It's usually actually 49-51, but we'll do this for simplicity's sake. So the athletic department, maybe I'll switch colors. Okay. So, oh, it didn't switch me. All right. We'll work with blue now. Okay, so the athletic department is, say it's 100 kids, 100 middle school children, 100 high school athletes. Now, under substantial proportionality, can anyone tell me what percentage of the kids in the athletic department, so that's kids, playing sports, what percentage should be athletes, like amongst the girls? What percentage of girls in the athletic program should you have?
50%.
No worries if no one knows. 50%, excellent. I don't have a prize to give right now, but yes, that's right. So it's 50% girls. That's the gold standard. And then it would be about 50% boys. And, it's give or take a couple kids because, say it's a little lower, it's 49% girls. That's okay. For example, if they can't create a whole new team, you maybe need 10 or 15 kids to make a team. If they're, below that number, then 50 to 49% gold standard. But that's what we want to see. And unfortunately, we don't see that barely at all. We actually see much closer to 41, 42% is what we're seeing mostly in California and the nation. So we've got a real crisis there because that's a significant gap. It's like a 9% gap in some places, anywhere 7, 8, 9%. And that translates into dozens, if not hundreds more girls that should be playing sports if the school is offering the right number of teams and sport programs. So just to quickly review the other two parts on the list here, Part 2 expansion, Part 3 accommodation. If the school doesn't have that gold standard, say let's use that 50-50 model, 50% girls in their athletic program, then they just need to show that they're expanding their opportunities over time. And it's kind of like a grace period idea, like, okay, maybe school's not proportional yet, but they're adding teams each year, they're adding these sports programs. That is a defense a school could use. It's hard to prove because 44 years after the law is passed, we think that they've had plenty of time to comply, but some schools may still use that argument. And then 3, the school could show they're fully and effectively accommodating the interests and abilities of the underrepresented sex of girls usually. So they could say, no, girls really don't want to play in greater numbers, but we find typically in our work that they really do want to play in greater numbers. Okay, so any questions on participation? That's a little bit dense, and I want to make sure that everyone's kind of coming along with me. Any questions there on that? I'd love to just stop a moment and see if there's any. Or it's perfectly clear. That would be good. Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
I think you made it clear. I was just curious, you mentioned charter schools, and is this information that the schools self-report, or how is this data, how are you finding out? I'm not surprised at all that it's lower in the 42%, but just curious. Like at school I work with, I have no idea.
Yeah, great question.
I don't even know what it is.
So what I'll do is I can send you a couple links through Kaylin after this on where to get the data. And actually the schools are self-reporting through federal and state requirements. So some of the data is available and some of it's wrong. It's not always, the schools don't even know sometimes which girls to count. Like they'll count cheerleaders sometimes as participants, but the cheer programs aren't usually competitive to the degree that they should be counted. But the long and short of it is that there are data sources, and I'd be happy to send them to you, and that would be a really nice way for you to evaluate what's going on in your school. So thanks for that question.
Great,
okay.
Thank you.
So I alluded to this before, but I want to put the stats up there so you can see that. So someone else asked, how are we doing with Title IX? And that's a great question. You know, are we doing better than we were in 1972 or 1962? Yes, we are, because before 1972, fewer than 300,000 girls were playing sports in high school, just to use that metric. And then now, in the 13-14 year, when some data was last available, 3.2 million girls were playing, and I think that's ticked up more toward 3.3 million now. So that is exciting because it means girls definitely wanted to play in greater numbers to any naysayers out there in 1972 that were opposed to Title IX. We're pleased to see that. But as you know, as I mentioned before, we're around 42% nationally in terms of that proportionality. You can see in the third bullet, girls are about 49% of high school students, and they're about 42% of high school athletes. And so that's a 7% gap. And again, 7% can sound small, but it really adds up. In a large high school, if you were to close that gap from 7% to 0%, that could be literally hundreds more girls playing sports in the school. Okay, so the next slide is results for girls thanks to Title IX. I just want to show you this really neat picture. I do litigate cases when necessary against school districts when they refuse to comply with Title IX. Oh, sorry, I did skip one slide I want to just get back to, sorry. The laundry list. So I mentioned 3 components. I'm putting up my 3 here. 3 components of Title IX. 1 is proportional opportunities, and 2 is treatment and benefits, which is this list, and then 3rd is non-retaliation. So laundry list is equipment and supplies, facilities for practices and games, locker rooms and team rooms, scheduling and practice and games, coaching, medical and training facilities, publicity and promotion, travel and per diem allowances, and housing and dining services. Some of these things matter more, like housing and dining at college level, but you know, sometimes actually high schools will have special dining options for athletes. So, and then, you know, coaching quality can be unequal amongst girls and boys. That's something to look at. Scheduling of practices and games. We see a lot of girls playing at bad times. They'll play right after school when none of the parents can come. And then, you know, the boys will have the 7 p.m. game when parents can attend. We see a lot of locker rooms and team rooms that are not equal. The boys have much better facilities. And then things like just field quality, gym quality, et cetera, are often better for boys. Equipment and supplies the same. Girls are using secondhand, threadbare uniforms, and boys have the much nicer uniforms. So this is a list of things you want to be aware of when you're looking at your local school. And I will send some checklists around with Kaylin so you can look at your school in your area. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to that slide and actually, yes, please go ahead.
Oh no, the audio was just cutting out a little, but you're back on.
Okay, good. Sorry, let me know if I cut out. So this is just a nice treatment and benefits example. The field quality here for softball was like this in 2006, and the boys' baseball field was very high quality, and the boys had these types of dugouts, concrete cinder block dugouts, and because of our case, the school built better dugouts for the girls, and this is what they have now. And this is a Sweetwater case down in San Diego where we worked on this. So this is what's possible through Title IX. You can get girls facilities that they deserve that are equal. Okay, so actually wanted to take a quick poll now. Kaylin, if you can open that up. I don't know if I should click there. Okay, I just want to know, we just talked about schools, so we're going to now go into park and recreation athletics. And I wanted to hear from the group, if you could just vote, whether you're working with schools or park and rec departments, or other might include both. So I think you can click on schools and park and rec if you wish, but I just want to know, who are you interacting with more, schools or parks and rec, or both? And we'll just give a second for people to take the poll.
The poll is online, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Lynn, are you able to administer it? Okay.
Yeah,
It's going to pop up on your screen most likely.
Yeah, I think for phone participants, I don't think there are options, unfortunately, but anyone who is on the online webinar can vote.
Oh, yeah. If you're on the online webinar versus just straight phone, you should be able to. Kaylin, is that popping up for people to pick?
One quick question, Kim. This is just varsity sports?
Just any.
It's beyond varsity sports.
Mm-hmm.
But Title IX is just directing varsity sport?
No, it's about all sports at the school. So JV, varsity, novice level sports, any team level. Like football sometimes would have 4 levels of teams. They might even have a freshman 1 and a freshman 2 team in addition to JV, varsity, sophomore level. Every single sport played where you're interscholastically competitive, so long as the team plays other schools. Title IX applies. Yeah.
But need to be recognized.
Okay, so Kaylin, I don't know if the poll is working.
As Ultimate Frisbee is not recognized, it doesn't include that sport if there is a girl team that competes with other schools.
I'm sorry, I think your audio went out for a second there. Can you say that again?
I'm saying just, for example, Ultimate Frisbee is not a recognized sport in school. So if there is a girl team that competes with other schools, that doesn't count inside the Title IX.
If the girls team is competing with other schools, then and it's a public school, then yes, they would be subject to Title IX requirements for gender equity. Okay, and we can also schedule a follow-up to chat more. Okay, Kaylin, did the survey finish up?
Yes, let me see.
Were people able to vote or maybe not?
Yes, they were. So we have
strictly audio.
Yeah. So far, so the poll shows that it's pretty split. It's of the participants, of the few participants, it's 40% schools, 40% Parks and Recs departments, and then 60% other.
Okay, great. So that's helpful to know. So it sounds like we have a pretty big split in the group working with schools and parks or both. So I'm excited to hear that because we're going to go on now. And I'm going to do this portion first and then see if we have time to look at the video. But I want to get this out to you guys. So the Fair Play and Community Sports Act is a park and rec law like Title IX, very similar requirements to the ones we just discussed. That's 10 years old. It's not 44 years old, but it's actually kind of I think of it as a 2.0 for Title IX because it's a little bit more advanced in some ways. So it was passed in 2004 in California. It's only a California law, effective 2005, and it requires gender equity and athletic program offered by and hosted through a park and rec. So that's not just the programs that Park and Rec offers, it's also the programs that they host. If they're just leasing land to third-party AYSO, Little League, football, anybody, and youth. We're focused on youth here. So not adult sports, basically the cutoff would be about 18 years of age. And it has to be competitive. So we're not talking about just clinics or, tournaments for one day. It's really usually about sustained competition. So Washington State passed a similar law in 2009, but I don't know of any other states that have a law like this. So I think we're actually really ahead of the game, which is neat. So what does the Act cover? As I mentioned, it's similar to Title IX. It covers participation opportunities, so very similar kind of analysis to the one we saw on the whiteboard with 50-50. So if you have 50% girls in the community, you'd want 50% girls in your athletic competitive programs. And then treatment and benefits is very similar too, and I'll go through that list. So just want to get the language out there. This is about cities and counties and special districts, and it requires they don't discriminate. Should not discriminate against any person on the basis of sex or gender in their community youth athletics programs. And I just wanted to note that there was a lawsuit in LA where mainly softball girls, but girls throughout the city saw inequity in their programs, and I believe that lawsuit led to the passage of this law, which is really neat to see lawsuits shaping great new laws. So what's covered? And this is something for you guys to use as a checklist. I think several people said they want to know what they can do about these issues. So we're talking about fields and courts and gymnasiums and rec rooms, restrooms, concession stands, storage spaces, lands, equipment, devices to promote athletics like a scoreboard, and money used in conjunction with youth athletics. So one little thing that I think is common at Park and Rec is that girls, for example, will play soccer in an area far away from restrooms, but the boys might play in a central location and have restrooms right available to them, or team rooms where they can meet in the halftime and that kind of thing. So those little inequities, they seem small, but they add up and they make the girls' experience much worse. And that's what this law seeks to change. And especially for those of you working with younger kids, Park and Rec is a gateway to school sports. So if a 6-year-old girl has a bad experience in her Park and Rec sports league, she's not likely going to try out for a middle school or high school team. So this is really an important law that should work in conjunction with Title IX. Okay, so just want to get the language out there, but it's very similar to Title IX. That first participation opportunity requirement assesses whether the Park and Rec entity is effectively accommodating the athletic interests and abilities of the members of both genders. So that's the number of slots that they're offering to girls and boys. And as I mentioned before, and I'm kind of repeating some things, but hopefully that'll make it stick a little bit more. So the community, if they're typically 50% female and 50% male, you should see roughly 50% female in the competitive youth athletic programs. And this is actual participants on the teams, not just slots. And that's true for both school and Park and Rec. A lot of schools we talk to and some Park and Rec will say, well, we offered softball to girls, but nobody showed up to play. Well, usually they're not doing the right kind of recruiting for girls, and they're just saying, you know, they might send one flyer out and no parents or guardians got it, or the girls didn't hear about it. This analysis is about who actually is playing, presuming that if you offer the sports the right way, girls will show up. And then there is a potential defense in the law that girls don't wish to play in higher numbers, just like under Title IX. But again, usually they want to play in greater numbers. And then if you all remember defense number 2, from the Title IX example when I said that the school could show that they were steadily going up in the numbers of girls playing, that defense is no longer available to Park and Rec. And that's why this law is somewhat better than Title IX, because the legislators realized that they shouldn't give Park and Rec a grace period anymore. Okay, so you don't have to get into all these details right now, but these are some of the things you want to look at for Park and Rec inequity. Monies and equipment and supplies provided, scheduling of games and practice times, just like with Title IX, coaching opportunities, how many coaches are girls getting versus boys, assignment and compensation of coaches, permitting, leasing, season. Sometimes they'll have the girls playing in the dead of winter where it's cold, and the boys have the springtime season when it's warm, location, locker rooms, facilities, publicity like banners around the Park and Rec. Sometimes they're celebrating the boys and not so much the girls. And officiation, like a high quality umpire for a boys baseball game, but they'll have a low quality umpire for a girls softball game. So those are things, and let me emphasize in both Park and Rec and school athletics, it's an overall programmatic analysis. So it's okay if one team has worse conditions than another team. You want to look at all of the teams together. And sometimes that's hard to analyze because we don't have all that information, but it's important to ask Park and Rec or schools for the big picture if possible. Okay, so quick couple of myths to bust here. So I mentioned already, but AYSO, Little League, any third party using Park and Rec facilities, they count. Some people think they don't count and Park and Rec can look the other way, but in fact those programs would be analyzed under the law. And then secondly, a lot of people say, well, girls don't want to play in greater numbers. They really do. You know, we find when advertising is good and recruiting is persistent and you offer the right sports, because not every girl wants to play football. They want to play volleyball or basketball or track and field. The girls come out and play. And actually in some of our analysis, we're seeing Park and Rec. Remember the 42% in school sports? So we have a gap there. But in community sports, we think it's more like 30%. So girls are about 50% of the community, but they're only about 30%, sometimes even lower, 20 to 10% of the youth competitive sports opportunities in the community. So we have a lot of work to do there. So that was a lot to cover. I just thought I might flip to the video if it's working, because it kind of summarizes what we've just talked about in a fun way. So maybe, Kaylin, if you can cue that up, and this will give everyone a chance to stop hearing me talking, and learn about the laws from another angle. Hopefully the sound is up. I don't know if folks can hear that.
Gender equity in sports is required by law.
Know and exercise your rights.
Why does this matter? Overall, girls who play sports get better grades and have higher standardized test scores than non-athletes.
Athletes are more likely to graduate high school and go on to college than those who don't play sports.
Research shows that girls who play sports in high school earn 7% more wages than their non-athlete peers.
It's really important for me to see gender equity in sports, especially comparing myself and some boy relatives that I have that have gone on to play collegiate athletics. I feel myself saying, I can do that, but I'm gonna do it on the women's side of things. I can get the same equipment, I can play at the same facilities, work out at the same facilities. That is my goal, and with Title IX, that I can do that.
I cannot imagine my life without sports. I'd say it would be incomplete. There would be something missing. Having physical activity, having a set time where you do things, it helps you with structure, and it helps regulate my life.
I definitely want to play sports just as much as my brother wants to. Just because we're different genders doesn't make anything different.
Title IX is a federal law that applies in California and throughout the nation that says there can be no discrimination based on gender in public schools. This means no unequal treatment of boys and girls in educational programs, including athletics. The law applies to all public elementary, middle, and high schools, including charter schools, colleges, and universities.
The law requires looking at the entire athletic program, not just one or two teams, to see whether girls and boys have equal treatment and benefits throughout the program. For example, girls and boys must have equal field quality, gyms and locker rooms, quality and number of coaches, equipment, and scheduling of games and practice times.
The law requires schools to oversee booster clubs, sports fundraising, and donations to ensure that equal resources are enjoyed by girls and boys alike.
Boys and girls must have equal participation in school sports.
So if there are 1,000 students at a school, 500 girls and 500 boys, and 100 of those students play on a school sports team, that means that 50 of those students should be girls and 50 of those students should be boys.
The law also prohibits retaliation against a student, coach, or parent who talks about Title IX or requests equity in their school sports program.
If you talk to someone like a principal because you think your school isn't following Title IX, you should not be disciplined for taking action.
Another important law for equity among girls and boys in sports is AB 2404, the Fair Play in Community Sports Act. The Fair Play Act is a California law similar to Title IX. It requires equal treatment of boys and girls in community youth, competitive athletic programs hosted by Parks and Rec departments. The Fair Play Act also applies to private sports programs that use park and rec facilities, like club soccer.
Look around. Does your park program or school treat girls equally in comparison to boys?
If you see inequality in your sports program, take action and speak up.
Gender equity in sports is required by law.
If you need help, you can contact Fair Play for Girls in Sports, a product of the Legal Aid Society Employment Law Center.
Okay. I think that's it for the video. Thanks, Kaylin. So going back to the presentation, hopefully that just gave you all a slightly new perspective and a girl narrated perspective on the law. And I just want to emphasize that video is short, simple. Sometimes it raises new issues for people in their community. So feel free to share it with your member organizations, your girls, and feel free to give us feedback because we make new videos and we'd love to educate further that way. So I want to just loop back to a presentation scenarios, and this is the quiz I mentioned. It's not really a quiz, but I just wanted to test what we've learned. So opportunities, I just want to do a quick run through on this, and I know our time is closing soon. So in the city of Whoville, based on what you've learned, a size 200-person community, there's 100 adults, 100 kids under 18, 50 boys, and 50 girls. And Whoville Park and Rec Department, although this could really be a school, so think of it either way, offers soccer, softball, baseball, tennis, and cheer. So, and I can go back to that first slide if needed. But who counts for participation, in terms of what we've been talking about? 50 kids are participating. The breakdown's 10 girls on softball, 10 boys on baseball, 10 boys on the soccer team, 10 girls taking tennis lessons, and 10 girls in cheer classes. So, you know, if anyone wants to just type in or shout out who counts under the Fair Play Act here.
Just the girls on the softball team.
That's right. So the 10 girls on the softball team right here are doing competitive youth athletics, whereas these 10 taking tennis lessons and doing the cheer classes do not count. So what is the issue here and how could it be addressed? And I'm happy to sort of, if anyone have been, but kind of give some suggestions. But, you know, as we talked about throughout the presentation and as you just identified, you know, there's some girls that are not getting sustained competitive opportunities, which lead to the academic success and employment success, because you're working toward a goal, you know, and the classes and lessons are okay. That's not a bad thing, but they should be in concert with competitive opportunities for girls. We don't want to give girls a second-rate opportunity or second-rate offerings. So we wouldn't count the non-competitive lessons and classes and tournaments and clinics under the law. And just skipping ahead here, you see the 10 girls taking tennis and the 10 girls in the cheer classes wouldn't count. You only have 10 athletic opportunities for girls, actual athletes playing, and 20 for boys. So you may consider adding 10 opportunities for girls, like a new soccer team. And this is a small scale example, but usually it could be, you know, a whole soccer program or a whole ultimate frisbee program or whatever the girls in your area want to play. Okay. So just a quick question, what's one strategy you think you could implement in your community to increase opportunities for girls with that kind of issue, you know, of not enough girls are playing? So
I'm guessing you'd have to go to the parent-teacher association, or that would be a good place to start.
Great idea, absolutely. So like a PTA might be a good place to share this video and ask, okay, parents and guardians, do you know if your girls want to try field hockey or lacrosse, or do they need more levels? Like Kaylin mentioned basketball, she wasn't encouraged to play. Maybe she just needed some more encouragement to try out for that team. So as someone else mentioned earlier, oh, sorry, we've got 2 number 1s, so maybe they're equally important. So getting the data from Park and Rec on terms of who's playing, you know, just getting those numbers about Whoville, you can ask Park and Rec for those numbers if you'd like through a Public Records Act request, PRA request. You can look at the OCR data. I'm going to share the links to get that data. There's a law called SB 1349 that also is providing that data. So I'll get you those links. Active recruitment strategies have to be used. Flyers aren't enough. Networks and partnerships like Alliance for Girls could probably help launch a great new girls program because of our strength in numbers and connections. And then recruiting female coaches who are great role models and officials. Single-sex programs, co-ed programs can be discouraging to certain girls, may need to be changed into single-sex. Males are champions of equity too, making sure that the males, boys, and men are on board with these changes is key, and being persistent. Okay, so next treatment and benefits scenario, and I'm going fast, but we'll definitely have a little time for questions, and you guys should call me after this. So League One in a tale of 2 sports programs is the Whoville players. The coaches are former college players. The uniforms are 2 sets of uniforms and new warm-ups. Equipment, new balls, numerous cones, movable goals. Facilities are reconditioned field with lights. And then League 2, Whoville Stars, the coaches are former high school players, not college players. They have no coaching experience. They have 1 t-shirt for the kids. They have old balls, bring your own cones from home, fixed goals so they can't move around into new configurations. And the field is shared with another program, baseball, with no lights. So what, in terms of these 2, the stars and the players, who are typically the girls and who are typically the boys? So it's probably obvious, but in our work anyways, the stars, League 2, is usually the girls. They have, you know, coaches with less experience, fewer uniforms and components of uniforms. They have old equipment, and their facilities are second rate. It's happening all over California, and we need to change it. It's happening all over the country. So how to resolve that? What do we do to work on that? Exercising our rights under those laws I discussed is one part of it. But anyone else have a suggestion on what we can do when you see those inequities? I'll go ahead and help us cheat a little bit. So recruiting and hiring coaches and volunteers, you know, a lot of times, like I have a lot of female friends who are great athletes, but have never been asked to coach in the school or community, and they just need to be asked and kind of awakened and activated. So just recruiting is key. Getting donations for teams is key for new uniforms and equipment. The Park and Rec and the school needs to oversee that donation process and be aware of it, but they can be instrumental in getting new donors, and then that can really help. And then permitting processes and evaluation. Lots of Park and Rec are not really revisiting the permitting process. They've been giving the boys the best permits for decades, and they're not giving girls teams the good permits on an equally rotating basis. So that should definitely be reevaluated. And same with schools. You know, oh, the football team's always had the best practice field in the school. Well, that needs to be reassessed and possibly altered. Okay, just a quick Mythbusters here. So any and all donations are okay. Not exactly. You need to be, the school and Park and Rec needs to oversee for equity that issue. Traditions are traditions. That's not okay either if they ignore the law. You know, if boys have always had, you know, the best things, that's not necessarily okay just because it's always been that way, obviously, and the law says that. And fixes are expensive. A lot of people think that it's expensive to make things equal. No, money is not always the answer. Just equitably sharing resources is key, and sometimes creative solutions are not financially oriented. Okay, so just one last question here. What's one concrete thing we can do in the next month to support equal treatment and benefits for girls' sports, and one long-term solution to explore in your community? Maybe one person on the phone or on the video could come up with one idea based on what they've heard to change things.
Well, long-term, definitely for us, is recruiting more women coaches, and as you mentioned,
more women coaches. Yeah, absolutely. I think women coaches are key. Yeah. Sorry, the audio is in and out right now. My fault. But yes, more women coaches, role models are key. So you pick number one: female coaches and officials, getting them in there. Joint use agreements with schools and Park and Recs and cities so that you can expand facilities options, and then inexpensive solutions like futsal and badminton. You know, sometimes they don't need a lot of facility space for those sports, and utilizing interns from local colleges could be a way to expand resources too in terms of staffing. So that was a really fast kind of review of everything, and I know we're right at 12:02 now, so I know if folks need to drop off, I understand totally, but I want to see if there's any questions and answers. I'm happy to stay on a couple more minutes, mindful of your time, or you can email me or call me with questions, but anything right now since we're all on the phone right now?
I have a question about structural strategies.
Yes.
At the state level.
Okay.
I know that Hannah Beth Jackson, did I get that name right?
Yes.
That has worked on Title IX, and so besides making sure that there's a lot of education and responsibility taken at the local level, it seems to me that I'm going to throw this one out. I think in terms of teacher preparation, that what goes on at the university, preparing the teachers and coaches, should definitely focus on Title IX. But I'm wondering about what's going on at the state level to support local efforts.
Yes. So Senator Hannah Beth Jackson, State Senator, we work with her a lot. She's trying to legislate essentially new requirements to strengthen these provisions. She's doing a great job, but I will say that for me anyways, I think the laws are there. We have the laws on the books. We have the guidance from Office for Civil Rights. It's all there. It's about compliance and enforcement. So I believe that it's really right now up to us, us on the phone, to look around at your school and your Park and Rec and your program and say, we're going to request change and make sure it happens, and use people like me as attorneys to help guide you. But we need a groundswell of people to ask for change and ask for compliance. For me, new laws won't help. The laws are there. We just need compliance. So I think we actually need to highlight and spotlight the schools and parks and recs that are looking the other way right now, and require and demand change. And I see a question on the chat. Several years ago, there was a movement to make cheerleading a legitimate sport. Has that gone anywhere? It has gone somewhere. There's a law, AB 949, that passed last year that actually will make cheer a competitive sport in California high school athletics starting the 2017-18 school year. And I have mixed feelings about this. I respect cheer tremendously. It's very difficult, and I have friends and folks I know who do it. The concern for us is to make sure that the cheer offered in the school is legitimate and fully competitive and has all the trappings that a boys basketball or boys baseball or football would have. So as long as the schools are careful in offering a sport that's not sideline cheer, it's actually a sport unto itself. They're not cheering for other people. They're doing their own thing. That's critical. So we're closely watching this to make sure that any cheer offered in schools is a legitimate sport and has all the trappings of a legitimate sport. Any other questions? Those are great ones. Okay. All right. Well, I know we're a little bit over time, so I really appreciate your patience and your time, and I hope that you'll email me. My contact information is here, but I know Kaylin is going to circulate it. This is our website. This is my email address. We have social media, and we also do events, and we've done events with Alliance partners, thanks to Alliance. So thanks to Kaylin and the whole Alliance and all of you for your time, and I look forward to talking more. So please contact me with any follow-up questions, and I'd love to connect more. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.